Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Kim Campbell and I'm really excited that you're here with me today. I'm making something fun. I'm making chickpea chocolate chip cookies. I love this recipe. It's gluten-free, it uses beans, it uses oats, and it's delicious. When my kids were little, I always made cookies and we played around with a lot of different ingredients. So I kind of came up with something that everyone liked, and I felt like it was a little bit healthier than a traditional cookie. So I will tell you this before we go forward. My cookies don't taste like the ones you get at the bakery at the grocery store. Those are crunchy and oily and very, very sweet. And mine are more like a muffin. They're a little bit soft and a little bit tender, and that's because we don't use all of the butters and the fats and all that good stuff. All that bad stuff, not good stuff. We're going to use good stuff today. So this recipe is in the PlantPure Kitchen Cookbook. I'll put it under here. That's the second cookbook I wrote, and it's on page 248, Chickpea Chocolate Chip Cookies. And I have a really hard time sticking to a recipe, and this is an older recipe, so I'm going to work really hard to stick to it. But I'll tell you as we go along how I maybe adjust it or adapt it. So the first thing we're going to do is preheat the oven to 375 degrees. Always do that because your cookies are going to, as soon as you put them in, they're going to fluff up and you're going to get a really much better cookie when you preheat your oven. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take a small bowl and we're going to put a tablespoon of flax meal in there. That is your egg replacer. And we're going to add a little bit of water, about 2 or 3 tablespoons. And we're going to let it sit while we're making the recipe. And it's going to get goopy and kind of slimy. And the flax meal is really good too because it adds a lot of those good fats. And then we'll set it aside. But if you forget to do the flax meal, it's okay. You can use the juice from the chickpea can, aquafaba it's called. So you could just use 2 or 3 tablespoons of that, and that would be the same as what we just did. And that's what I do a lot. So again, I'm trying to stick close to my recipe. Then it calls for a 1.5 cups of oats. And what you're going to do is you're going to put your oats in your blender. And I love my NutriBullet. It's just so easy and it's light. I can get it out. I like my Vitamix, but I actually really like this more. So we're going to take the oats and put them in here. I should have done that before we started. I never buy oat flour anymore. I just buy oats and I grind it up in my mixer, my blender. I think we got most of it here. Put our blender top on. And what I love about these NutriBullets is you can get replacement. I have like 3 of them. So if one's in the dishwasher and you have another one going, you can also get blades too. You can get replacement blades. It's a really good company. Okay, here we go. If you want to use regular whole wheat flour because you don't want to fuss with the oats, you can do that too because it works. And we'll put it in our mixing bowl. And I'm going to set this aside because we're going to use it again in a minute. And then, so we're going to keep adding the dry ingredients to the bowl. I'm trying to follow the ingredients so that I don't go off on another tangent. We're going to add peanut butter powder, PB2 powder. It's a 1/2 cup. If you don't have PB2 powder, I don't really know why I did that. I think it's because I had it and we used it and it was easier. You can also just use peanut butter. PB2 is just defatted peanuts if you're concerned about fats. But I have used just like a 1/4 cup of peanut butter. And actually, I think the flavor of the peanut butter is nicer than the PB2. Make sure when you buy peanut butter that you buy it with only peanuts, maybe some salt, but don't buy the kind that have palm oil in it. That way, what they do is they do that so it spreads and it's really smooth and creamy. But that's not the peanut butter that you want. This is the PB2 brand I used. It does have a little bit of sugar in it. It's such a small amount. But if you're concerned about that, I would go with the peanut butter. There's always a substitution. And then we're going to add our chocolate chips, and I have about 1 cup. And if you want to go lighter in the chocolate chips, you can do a 1/2 cup to 3/4 of a cup. And everybody always asks me what kind of chocolate chips. There's so many chocolate chips out there that you can choose from. Some are like $8 a bag and others are $4 or $5 a bag. I get the Nestle's, and then it's a dark chocolate and it's pure and simple, and it's made with only, I think, 3 or 4 ingredients, so it's really basic. So that's that. Then we're going to add our baking soda, baking powder, and a little bit of sea salt. And the reason you want to add sea salt to a cookie recipe is it just helps everything to pop. So we'll put that in there. And then, did I give it all chocolate chips? And then just mix it up. I'm going to get all those dry ingredients really mixed in well. Did I mention that we have a PlantPure meal starter, a cookie pack? Yes, you heard me right. We have a cookie pack. It's so good. All you have to do is, it comes kind of like this, and you add the chocolate chips or the raisins and the applesauce, but peanut butter. You can add a few things and you have a cookie mix. I love it. I use it all the time. All right, so then we're going to go to back to the blender. We're going to use chickpeas. So I used about 1.5 cans I used 1 can of chickpeas, which is equal to 1.5 cups of chickpeas if you're making your own. We're going to put those in the blender. And like I said, the juice that's in the chickpeas is called aquafaba, and it's a great egg replacer. I think 3 tablespoons is equal to 1 egg. And it actually is a really nice egg replacer. So if you're making veggie burgers or cookies or cakes and you want to use that, that's a great option. Then what we want to do is add milk. I have 3/4 of a cup of soy milk I'm using. Why do I use soy milk? I like soy milk because it has a little more fat in it, so it helps a cookie to be a cookie. So we'll put that in there. Then it calls for some vanilla. Every cookie has vanilla. And then we'll put the recipe calls for sucanat. I'm using coconut sugar, and I think it calls for 3/4 of a cup. I know, it's a cookie. That's why when you make these, if you know it's kind of a temptation, freeze half of them, and then you'll have half of them, to eat. But if it's something that it's your weakness, you can cut back on the sugar. The first time I met Nelson, his mom made cookies a lot. She had 5 kids. And she used to cut the sugar in half. And it was so good. When you go to eat a regular cookie, now you notice how sweet they are. Okay, I'm going to blend these up for a minute or so. You want to make sure you blend them long enough so that you get all those beans puree. Don't forget, you got your flax egg. So a lot of times, I can't tell you how many times I've made cookies and found the flax egg in the corner and it still works, but you want to make sure you use that. Then we're going to add the goopy sauce, sweet goopy sauce, with beans. And your kids will never know that there's chickpeas in it. They will never know. And then we're going to add, see how goopy that got? That's your flax meal. So mix it until it's thoroughly mixed. This is going to be a little bit wetter than your average cookie mix. When you're using wheat flour, this is a fact, you don't want to overmix it. And I think I said in here not to overmix, but it's oat flour, so you don't really need to worry about it because it doesn't have any gluten in it. Those gluten strands, when you're using whole wheat flour, begin to activate when you stir. And as you stir it, you get more gluten, and then your cookie or your muffin or whatever baked goods you have is going to get a little bit more tough. I think that's probably pretty good. This is a pretty good sized recipe, as you can see. Make sure you spray to the bottom. This is the hard part. This is where I start getting into cookie dough because it's so good. Okay, so let's talk about baking it. I have a big cookie sheet. There's two things you can do. You don't have to oil the pan. There's so many nonstick pans out now. But I always use parchment paper. I didn't have the natural parchment paper. I only had white. You put that on your cookie sheet, and then you don't have to wash your pans, really just rinse them. Or you can use a silicone mat. You can see mine is really beat up, but I put it in the dishwasher, and it's not exactly the prettiest, but it works. Then I use a cookie scoop. This took me years to learn this, but the cookie scoop is really nice because you're always going to get the same amount unless you're eating cookies. And just scoop them out. And I think this recipe is probably going to give me at least 2 dozen cookies. So when my kids were little, they made cookies a lot. And I gave them a cookie formula. And they got really good at it. They knew what flours worked best. They learned, what sugars. Sometimes they used maple syrup. Sometimes they used a banana. Sometimes you can use pumpkin if you want a butter replacer. Applesauce. And I think, just playing around with a cookie dough and figuring out what you like and what works. You can also use almond flour. You can do a blend of that. I do mix it well. You can do a blend of almond flour and oat flour, and that will make for a little bit more dense cookie. And you can put nuts in these or raisins or whatever you want. I have I think I have another cookie recipe in the PlantPure Nation Cookbook. I have Fig Newtons in the new cookbook. I love cookies. So then here's the trick. What I do is I take a spoon and some water. Hang on one second. And I like to flatten them. Just like that. And if you keep them in the water, it'll keep it from sticking. You can use your hands as well. And then I'm going to stick them in the oven. I'm going to bake them for about 8 to 12 minutes. Every oven is different. I have a gas oven here, and I'm still trying to figure out how to use it. But for your oven, it might be 6 or 7 minutes. So just make sure you keep checking it. All right. I'm going to stop there, and I'll meet you back here because I'm going to finish this. I'm going to throw them in the oven, and I'll see you back here in about 2 seconds.